My name is Mira Ellison, and I'm 42 years old. I live in the peaceful little town of Brookhaven with my 10-year-old daughter, Zoe. After divorcing my husband 5 years ago, I've been raising her on my own. Life hasn't been easy, but Zoe makes every moment worth it. I run a small bookstore on Maple Street. It's nothing fancy, just shelves full of well-loved paperbacks and the scent of fresh coffee from the cafe next door. The locals know me by name, and I've built a steady rhythm in this quiet corner of the world. Zoe is a quiet child, gentle, thoughtful, and far more mature than most kids her age. She has long honey-colored hair that she inherited from her father, and eyes the exact shade of warm brown as mine. She's not the talkative type, but the moment her fingers touch the piano keys, it's like watching her soul speak. Music is her language, and every note she plays makes me feel like I'm witnessing something sacred. One afternoon, as Zoe returned from school, she dropped her backpack on the floor and grabbed an apple from the kitchen counter. "Mom, what's for dinner tonight?" she asked, biting into it. I smiled while pulling out ingredients from the fridge. "How about chicken pot pie? Your favorite." Her eyes lit up, and she nodded. "Can I play Chopin's Prelude before dinner? I want to get it right for tomorrow's lesson." "I'd love that," I said, setting down the vegetables. "Go ahead, sweetheart." Zoe walked over to the upright piano in the living room and gently opened the lid. As her small fingers danced across the keys, the house filled with soft, melancholic notes. Every time she played, it was like the walls leaned in to listen. It should have been a simple, happy evening, just a mother, a daughter, and the comforting sounds of home. But beneath it all, there was always a shadow in my heart. And that shadow had a name: my family. My parents, Linda and Robert, live on the outskirts of Brookhaven in a large house with a well-kept yard and too many memories. They used to run a successful diner downtown, but now they've retired. My younger sister, Jenna, lives a few blocks away from them. She works at a local insurance firm and is a single mother to her twin boys, Ryan and Mason, 8 years old, and known for being loud, wild, and honestly a bit spoiled. Growing up, I was the responsible one. The daughter who did the dishes, vacuumed the floors, and helped close the restaurant every night. Jenna, on the other hand, was the sweet one, the cute baby of the family. She got away with everything. If she dropped a glass, it was called an accident. If I so much as sighed in frustration, I was being disrespectful. When I complained, my mother always said the same thing: "You're the eldest, Mira. That's your role." Eventually, I stopped complaining and just accepted it. But some things never change. Even now, at family gatherings, conversations shift toward Jenna's boys. If I mention Zoe's piano performance, it's met with polite nods before everyone dives back into how Ryan solved a Rubik's Cube or how Mason is learning karate. I smile through it, but inside, it still stings. Despite it all, I've tried to keep a connection with them for Zoe's sake. I don't want her to grow up without grandparents. I don't want her to feel what I felt: invisible. One Thursday evening, as Zoe sat at the dining table finishing her homework, she looked up and asked casually, "Mom, are we going to Grandma and Grandpa's house this weekend?" The question caught me off guard. Why? Ryan and Mason said at school they got a new game console. I just thought maybe I'd get to see it. I hesitated. It wasn't the console. She didn't care about video games. She just wanted to belong, maybe to feel like part of a bigger family. "I don't know yet," I replied, forcing a smile. "We'll see." Inside, though, my heart tightened. I didn't trust them with her. Not completely. Not when history had shown me what their version of love looked like. The following week, I received an envelope in the mail. It was cream-colored with delicate floral designs pressed into the paper. Inside was an invitation to the wedding of Sarah Williams, my college roommate and one of the few people who'd stood by me through my divorce. I hadn't been to a wedding in years. The idea of dressing up, being among laughter and music, even just for an evening, sounded refreshing. And Sarah deserved my support. She had finally found happiness after her own heartbreak. That evening, as I sat on the couch reviewing the invitation, Zoe curled up beside me, flipping through a music book. "Mom, what will I do while you're at the wedding?" she asked. I paused. I was thinking maybe we could ask someone to come stay with you. Or would you want to spend the day with Grandma and Grandpa? Zoe looked up, thoughtful. I could play the piano for them. I think Grandma likes Chopin. Her answer made me hesitate. My instincts warned me not to leave her there. But I looked at her hopeful face and reminded myself, maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd changed. Or maybe I was just tired of always assuming the worst.
I called my mother that night.
Of course, Mira. We'd love to have Zoe, Linda said brightly over the phone. It's been too long. She can bring her music books. We'll have a nice time. After hanging up, I turned to Zoe. Are you sure you'll be okay there? She nodded gently. I'm looking forward to playing the piano with Grandma. I stroked her hair and whispered, All right then. I'll drop you off tomorrow evening, and I'll pick you up the next day. Part of me felt uneasy, but I told myself it would just be for one night. What harm could come from one night? The next morning felt different, lighter, in a way I hadn't felt in years. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, wearing a wine-red silk dress I hadn't touched in ages. I pinned my hair up with care and added a bit of makeup, just enough to feel like someone other than a mother or bookstore owner for a few hours. Zoe walked into the room, her eyes widening as she saw me. Mom, you look really pretty, she said with a shy smile. I turned toward her and smoothed her hair.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Be a good girl at Grandma's, okay?
Practice the piano.
I know she'll enjoy hearing you play. Zoe had already packed her backpack the night before, some books, her sheet music, her asthma inhaler, and allergy medicine. We drove through the quiet streets of Brookhaven, the late afternoon sun glowing against the trees. As we pulled into my parents' driveway, that familiar blend of nostalgia and discomfort crept into my chest. Linda opened the door with a wide smile.
Zoe, come in, come in.
Grandma's been waiting. She hugged Zoe and gave me a once-over. Mira, you look lovely in that dress. Thanks, I said flatly, setting Zoe's bag down inside the doorway. Her meds are in the front pocket. Her asthma's under control, but just in case. Also, she has a mild nut allergy. Yes, don't worry. We'll take care of our granddaughter, Robert added, stepping into view behind her. I looked at them both, my fingers tightening around my car keys. I'll pick her up tomorrow evening. Zoe gave me a quick hug, her face calm. Have fun, Mom. Don't worry. I forced a smile and turned to go. The wedding venue was already buzzing when I arrived. Flowers, music, laughter. It felt like another world. Sarah was glowing in her white gown, and when she saw me, her face lit up. Mira, you came. Oh, I'm so happy to see you, she said, pulling me into a hug. You look beautiful, Sarah. I'm really happy for you. We talked, laughed, danced. For a little while, I let myself feel like a woman again, not just a mother. But midway through the evening, as the cake was being served, I received a text from my mother. Zoe is just being a little disobedient. Nothing serious. My stomach twisted. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe she was just watching too much TV or refusing vegetables. Still, that uneasiness crept back in, just like it always did. Mira, you okay? Asked Lisa, another college friend sitting beside me. Yeah, just a little worried. My mom said Zoe's not listening. Lisa waved her hand. Oh, kids, you finally look relaxed. Enjoy it. I nodded, smiled, but my heart had already shifted. I checked the time and decided to leave earlier than planned. As I drove back through the quiet streets, something in me just knew. Something wasn't right. As I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house, the sky had dimmed to a soft blue, the porch light casting a yellow glow on the front steps. But something felt off. The door was slightly ajar. I stepped inside. No one came to greet me. From the living room, I heard the loud sounds of video games, fast clicking, explosions, excited voices. I walked in and saw Ryan and Mason sitting on the couch, completely absorbed in their new game console. They didn't even glance up when I entered. Hey, I said, my voice firm. Where's Zoe? No response. I heard water running in the kitchen. When I stepped in, my heart dropped. Zoe was standing on a stool at the kitchen sink, her small frame shaking. Her hands were submerged in a sink full of soapy water and dirty dishes. But that wasn't what made me freeze in place. It was the blood trickling from a cut just above her right eyebrow. A shattered glass lay on the floor nearby. Linda sat casually at the kitchen table, sipping coffee. Jenna stood beside her, arms crossed, chatting like it was any normal evening. What happened? My voice was shaking. Linda looked up unfazed. She refused to help, so I disciplined her. She's being dramatic. I walked straight to Zoe, gently taking her hands out of the sink. She winced, flinching slightly as I wiped her wet fingers with a towel. Then I reached for her face, my fingers trembling as I examined the bleeding gash above her eye. She said she didn't want to do the dishes, Linda added dismissively. So, I tapped her with a glass. It wasn't hard. She has to learn respect. You hit her? With a glass? I asked, my voice barely audible. She needed discipline, Jenna said, shrugging. You're too soft on her, Mira. I couldn't breathe. Zoe's eyes met mine, red, puffy, silently pleading. I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone with steady hands. 911. What's your emergency? My 10-year-old daughter has been assaulted. She's bleeding from her head. I need police and paramedics at 621 Willow Bend Drive.
Right now.
Within minutes, the quiet of the neighborhood was shattered by flashing red and blue lights. A police cruiser and an ambulance pulled up in front of the house. I stood at the doorway, holding Zoe in my arms, her head resting against my shoulder as the blood from her cut stained the sleeve of my dress. 2 officers stepped out of the car, followed closely by 2 paramedics with medical kits. I pointed toward the kitchen. She's inside, I said, my voice cold and flat. She hit my daughter with a glass. That's the weapon, on the floor by the sink. The officers entered calmly, but with authority. Linda was still seated at the table, coffee in hand. Jenna leaned against the counter, arms crossed. One officer approached Linda. Ma'am, please stand up. What is this? She asked, brows lifting as if the entire situation was beneath her. You're being placed under arrest for assault and child endangerment. You have the right to remain silent.
What?
That's absurd. I'm her grandmother, she shouted, standing abruptly. You assaulted a minor with a glass object, the officer stated, firmly taking her by the arm. You'll have a chance to explain yourself in court. As Linda resisted, Jenna stepped forward. Wait a minute. This is blown way out of proportion. She was just trying to teach the girl discipline. The second officer turned to her. And you witnessed it and chose not to intervene? Jenna's mouth opened, but no sound came out. You'll be detained for obstruction and failure to report abuse. We'll sort it out at the station. They placed Linda in handcuffs and guided her out the front door. Jenna followed, handcuffed as well, her face pale and stunned. Meanwhile, one of the paramedics gently took Zoe from my arms and laid her on the gurney. He examined the cut above her eyebrow while the other checked her vitals. She's stable, he said softly. The cut's deep but clean. We'll need to take her to the hospital for stitches and a full evaluation. I nodded, brushing Zoe's hair back. I'm coming with you. Zoe's hand gripped mine tightly. As we climbed into the ambulance, I looked back at the house, at the place where I once tried to believe family meant safety. Now, I only saw a crime scene. The emergency room was brightly lit, but it felt cold, too sterile, too quiet, too far removed from the warm, familiar world I had tried to give my daughter. Zoe lay on the hospital bed, clutching my hand as the doctor gently cleaned the wound on her forehead. She didn't cry. She hadn't shed a single tear since the ambulance ride. That silence cut me deeper than any scream ever could. The doctor, a kind woman with gentle eyes, spoke softly. It's a clean laceration, but it needed 5 stitches. We've checked for concussion symptoms. Her vitals are normal, but I'd like to keep her overnight for observation. Of course, I whispered. After the doctor stepped out, I sat beside Zoe and stroked her hair, brushing a loose strand behind her ear. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I should never have taken you there. I should have trusted my instincts. Zoe finally looked at me, her eyes tired and puffy. "I didn't do anything wrong, Mom. I just wanted to play the piano." A knot formed in my throat. "You didn't do anything wrong. Not one thing. What happened was not your fault." She leaned her head against my arm, and I felt her small body finally relax. When she fell asleep, I stepped out into the hallway. My hands were still shaking, but my mind had never been clearer. I pulled out my phone and made another call.
Hi.
"Yes, I need to speak with a family law attorney. It's urgent. This wasn't just about an injury. This was about standing up for my child, for myself, and for the years of silence I had tolerated under the mask of family obligation. My mother had crossed a line. And now, I was going to make sure the law did what love had failed to do, hold her accountable." 2 days later, I sat in the office of Mark Ellis, a sharp-eyed, come-spoken attorney who specialized in family law and child protection cases. I handed him a copy of the hospital report, the photos of Zoe's injury, and the official police report from the night of the incident. As he flipped through the documents, he nodded slowly. "This is a strong case, Mira. You have medical evidence, a minor victim, eyewitness statements, and a recorded 911 call. It's more than enough to pursue felony charges for child abuse." "I want to move forward," I said, my voice steady. "No second chances. No family excuses. My daughter deserves justice." Mark leaned forward. "Then we'll file criminal charges immediately. And if you want, we can also pursue a restraining order to prevent future contact." "I want both," I said without hesitation. By the end of the week, the paperwork was filed. The court set a date for the preliminary hearing, and the district attorney's office picked up the case due to the severity of the assault. Linda was already being held without bail, and Jenna had been released pending investigation, but not without consequences. She was facing misdemeanor charges for willful neglect and obstruction. The courtroom on the day of the hearing felt heavy, but I held Zoe's hand tightly as we sat in the front row. Linda stood in the defendant's box, dressed in a beige jumpsuit, eyes empty and proud. She didn't glance at us once. But the evidence was overwhelming. The doctor's testimony, the paramedic's report, my 911 call played aloud in front of everyone. The photos of Zoe's wound, enlarged for the jury. The judge's face remained expressionless, but his tone was cold. After deliberation, the sentence was delivered. Linda Porter is hereby sentenced to 5 years in state prison for aggravated child abuse. Parole eligibility will be reviewed after 1 year under strict supervision. Jenna's turn came next. She was sentenced to 6 months of community service, mandatory parenting classes, and was placed under court supervision for 1 year due to her inaction and endangerment of a minor. I didn't feel triumph, but I did feel peace. I looked at Zoe beside me, safe, healing, and brave. And I knew we weren't victims anymore. We were survivors. After the sentencing, I withdrew from everything for a while: family, holidays, even the small social circles around my bookstore. I needed space. Zoe needed space. And more than anything, we needed time to heal. We returned to our routine, but something fundamental had changed. There was a quiet strength in Zoe now, one that hadn't been there before. She still played the piano, but there was more confidence in her fingers, more presence in her performance. Like she had something to prove, but not to them, to herself. I didn't take any calls from my father, Robert. He'd left a few voicemails, some emotional, some pleading, others quiet apologies in half-formed words. I didn't respond. Not yet. As for Jenna, she disappeared into her own chaos. I heard through mutual contacts that she was struggling. Parenting was collapsing under the weight of accountability, and her relationship was breaking apart. For the first time, she was feeling what it was like to face consequences. Zoe and I spent our evenings together, reading, cooking simple meals, and practicing for her upcoming piano recital. The house felt calmer now, lighter. One night, as we were tidying up after dinner, she looked up at me from across the table. "Mom, am I ever going to have to see Grandma again?" I walked over and knelt beside her chair. "No," I said softly. "Not unless you want to.
You are in charge of that choice now.
No one else." She exhaled, visibly relieved. "Okay. The next morning, she practiced Debussy's Clair de Lune with more soul than I'd ever heard from her before. It wasn't just a piece of music anymore. It was a release. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon. I had just closed the bookstore early, due to the weather, when my phone rang. The number was unknown, and for a moment I considered ignoring it, but something told me to answer. Hello. Hi. Is this Mira Ellison?
Yes.
Who's speaking? This is Claire from St. Vincent's Hospital. Your father, Robert Porter, was admitted this morning after suffering a heart attack. He listed you as his emergency contact. My breath caught in my throat. Oh, okay. Is he stable? He's out of immediate danger, but we recommend you come in as soon as you can. Thank you. I'll be there shortly. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and quiet worry. I moved through the corridors almost on autopilot until I reached the cardiac unit. Through the window of room 214, I saw my father lying in the bed, pale, frail, and hooked up to more machines than I could count. I stepped inside and sat in the chair beside him. His eyes were closed. I didn't say anything. Eventually, he stirred. His eyes opened slowly, and he turned his head to look at me. Mira, he whispered. You came. I did. His voice cracked. I'm sorry for what I let happen, for what I didn't stop. I said nothing. I didn't forgive him. I didn't attack him either. I just sat there, quietly, in a moment that wasn't about redemption or comfort, just truth. In the weeks that followed, my father began the slow process of recovery. After being discharged from a hospital, he was moved into a home care program with weekly nurse visits, medication routines, and physical therapy. I agreed to help on my terms. 3 days a week, I would stop by to manage his medications and blood pressure, review his rehab progress, and speak with the nurses. I didn't bring Zoe. I didn't stay long. I didn't sit and chat. I did what needed to be done. Nothing more. He never asked for more. Each visit was quiet. Sometimes he tried to make small talk. Sometimes he just thanked me. Other times he would open his mouth to say something, maybe an apology, maybe a memory, but I would redirect the conversation back to the charts or notes from the nurse. My mother was no longer in the picture, serving her sentence. And the house, once full of judgment and invisible rules, now felt hollow, like it had lost its power over me. Jenna rarely showed up. When she did, it was a whirlwind of excuses. I'm dealing with Ryan's school issues. Mason has a cold. I'm overwhelmed. In the past, I would have rolled my eyes or said something sharp. But now, I just observed her from a distance. She was unraveling. Not because someone had hurt her, but because she was finally seeing the consequences of her choices. Oddly, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace. Zoe, meanwhile, was thriving. Her piano teacher had nominated her for a regional competition, and she was practicing with renewed energy. She didn't ask about her grandparents anymore, and I didn't bring them up. Our little world, just the two of us, was finally steady. But healing has a strange way of making room for new questions. And Zoe was about to ask one that I hadn't expected. It was a rainy Saturday morning when Zoe came running into the kitchen, her cheeks flushed with excitement, waving a folded sheet of paper in her hand.
Mom, look.
I got selected. I took the paper from her, scanned the bold header. Congratulations. You've been chosen to represent Brookhaven in the Regional Youth Piano Competition. I looked up, my heart swelling. Zoe, that's incredible. She grinned, biting her lower lip in that shy way she always did when overwhelmed with joy. I didn't think I'd make it. I knelt down and hugged her tightly. I always knew you would. Later that evening, as we sat in the living room with mugs of cocoa, the paper still resting on the coffee table, Zoe turned to me with an expression I hadn't seen in a while. Careful, thoughtful, maybe even conflicted. Mom, do you think Grandpa would want to know? I paused, lowering my mug. About the competition, she added quickly. I'm not saying I want to see him. I just thought maybe it would make him happy to hear it.
I didn't answer right away.
It wasn't an unreasonable thought. Robert had been quiet, reflective, even remorseful during the last few visits. And Zoe, despite everything, still had a heart that reached outward. I'll think about it, I said softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. But only if you're truly okay with it. She nodded slowly, then turned to the piano and began playing the piece she had chosen for the competition. Her fingers moved with grace and purpose, filling the house with a melody so tender it felt like time had stopped. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. If there was ever going to be closure, for her, for me, it would have to be earned. 1 week later, I received an unexpected letter in the mail, not handwritten, but formally typed on legal letterhead. It was from my mother's parole officer. The letter stated that Linda had been granted early parole after serving 1 year of her 5-year sentence due to her age, clean behavior, and successful completion of court-mandated therapy. She was now under strict supervision and had requested a monitored, voluntary meeting with Zoe. The letter emphasized that no contact would happen without our permission. I sat with it in my hands for nearly an hour before I brought it up to Zoe. "Sweetheart," I said gently, "Grandma's been released early. She wants to meet, to apologize. But only if you agree. You don't have to decide right now." Zoe was quiet, staring at her piano keys. Then she nodded. "I want to hear what she has to say." That Saturday afternoon, Robert arrived first, now walking with a cane, looking older and quieter than I remembered. A few minutes later, a black car pulled into the driveway. Out stepped Linda, accompanied by her parole officer, who waited outside while she walked slowly toward the house. When she entered, her gaze fell on Zoe. She looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders slightly hunched, face pale, eyes sunken with something that might have been guilt. Zoe stood stiffly near the piano, her hands at her sides. Linda took a shaky breath and spoke, her voice low. "Zoe, I came here because I owe you the biggest apology of my life." Zoe didn't move. "I hurt you. I hurt you in a way no child should ever be hurt. I've thought about that night every day since. I was angry, controlling, cruel, and none of that is your fault." Her voice cracked. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it to your face. I'm sorry." Silence. Then Zoe, barely above a whisper, asked, "Why did you treat me like that when I didn't do anything wrong?" Linda looked down. Her lips trembled. "Because I thought obedience meant silence. Because I spoiled Ryan and Mason, and I saw your quietness as something I could take advantage of. I was wrong. So very wrong." Robert stepped closer, tears glistening in his eyes. "We failed both of you. You and your mother. We let our pride become our parenting." I glanced at Zoe. Her expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, she walked over to the piano and sat. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play Nocturne in E-flat major, the same piece she had once been scolded for wanting to practice. The notes floated through the room like a soft wind. And when the music stopped, Zoe looked up and said quietly, "Thank you for the apology." Then she turned to me. "Is it okay if they come to the competition?" I blinked, surprised, but nodded. "Yes, if you want them there." Linda wiped her cheeks, whispering, "Thank you, both of you." As they left, Linda turned to me at the door. "You raised her well, Mira. Better than I ever did with either of you." For the first time, those words didn't stir the ache they once would have. They didn't feel like validation. They just felt honest. A year had passed since the day Zoe played for Linda and Robert in our living room. Now it was a sunny Sunday afternoon in spring. A long table was set up in our backyard, covered in a floral cloth and surrounded by chairs that weren't quite matching, but that didn't matter. What mattered was who filled them. Zoe, now 12, sat proudly at the head of the table, her music certificate framed beside her plate. She had not only participated in the regional piano competition, she had placed second and earned a recommendation to the local music school. Robert was seated comfortably in a deck chair, looking stronger and more at peace than I had seen him in years. He had returned to light golf and daily walks. Linda, sitting quietly beside him, no longer tried to lead the conversation. Instead, she listened. She smiled gently when spoken to. Her presence had softened, shaped not by time, but by humility. "So, Zoe," Robert asked with a warm grin, have you decided on your next recital piece? Zoe sipped her lemonade and nodded.
Yes.
I'm going to play Debussy's Clair de Lune. Linda smiled faintly, her eyes shining. That's a beautiful choice, dear. Just like you. I walked out from the kitchen with a fruit platter, setting it on the table as the breeze tugged at the napkins. We had come so far. We didn't forget what happened. We didn't pretend it didn't matter. But we found a way to move forward with boundaries, with clarity, and above all, with respect. Are Ryan and Mason coming too? Zoe asked, brushing her hair back. Yes, I said, glancing at the driveway. They should be here soon. In the months following Linda's release, Robert had stepped in more actively as a grandfather. He helped Jenna with her sons, encouraging discipline without cruelty. Slowly, under court supervision and with counseling, Jenna had begun to change too.
The doorbell rang.
I answered it to find Jenna and the boys standing there. Sorry we're late, Jenna said, her face showing lines of fatigue, but also effort. Ryan and Mason had a meltdown over shoes. The twins greeted me politely, more than I could have hoped for a year ago. After lunch, while the kids played in the yard, Jenna sat beside me on the porch steps. I know I was awful that day, she said softly. I was just trying to protect my own. But I failed to protect yours. I said nothing for a moment. Then I replied, what matters now is that we protect them all. That we raise them with accountability and love that doesn't hurt. She nodded, blinking back tears. I'm trying. I know. Inside, the sound of Zoe playing the piano floated out through the open windows.
It wasn't a performance this time. Just her playing.
Free and joyful. That music no longer reminded me of pain. It reminded me of everything we'd overcome. As the sun dipped low behind the trees, casting golden light across our backyard, Zoe stood by the piano, brushing her hands lightly across the keys. Everyone had finished dessert. Laughter had mellowed into quiet conversation. The scent of lemon cake still lingered in the air. Zoe looked up at us, a soft but certain expression on her face. I've been thinking a lot, she said. After music school, I want to be a piano teacher. I blinked, surprised, but deeply proud. I want to teach kids like me, she continued, to show them how music can help you feel brave. A hush fell over the table, warm, emotional. Linda's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. Robert simply smiled, his eyes glassy. Jenna placed a hand over her heart. I got up and walked over to Zoe, wrapping my arms around her shoulders. You're going to be a wonderful teacher, I whispered, because you already are brave. As she sat down and began to play a soft, flowing piece, I stepped back and let the music take over. Each note seemed to carry a piece of our journey, grief, anger, strength, and forgiveness, all wrapped into one. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to look back. I didn't carry the weight of old wounds or unanswered questions. I had protected my daughter. I had fought for her. And, in the process, I had found myself. Forgiveness hadn't erased what happened, but it had freed us from being prisoners to it. And in that freedom, we had created something new, a family defined not by blood, but by change, truth, and the courage to grow. As Zoe played the final note, it echoed gently into the early evening sky. And I knew we were finally home. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video. It truly helps us reach more amazing viewers like you. Got thoughts, feelings, or even a similar experience? We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Your words matter. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you never miss another powerful story that speaks to the soul. Thank you for watching, and remember, healing begins when truth is told.